I hope you're having an amazing day. My name is Colin, and in this video we're going to have a look at the best launchpad to buy right now. Nothing in this video is financial advice, it is for entertainment purposes only. There are many different launchpads to choose from. I'm on CoinMarketCap right now in the launchpad category, and there's a little sum up of all the available launchpads. Of course, we would join these launchpads with two things in mind, and that's what I want to focus on in this video. One, the actual incremental increases in the value of the tokens, and at the same time the allocation that you get for their IDO projects. The IDO projects, in my opinion, should have the main focus. However, how do you find the balance between those two things? I'm going to open up a couple of different projects where basically the overview is pretty nice presented. I'm looking specifically for bin starter, which I just noticed right here. I will open up True P&L. Then I will use the search function to pull up AnyPad, and I'm going to pull up a launch zone. So we have 4 different launch pads in the overview right here. And we're going to look at those, let's say on a 3-month, let's say a 1-year basis. 1 year is easiest because obviously the launch pads are heavily impacted by the Bitcoin crash that recently occurred. So we can see a linear downward trend on almost all of these launch pads. However, I do want to zoom in on a couple of things. So these charts, they look somewhat the same, but they do look very different overall, right? So Launchzone and bin starter have the most accurate graph, most the same. AnyPad thereafter and True P&L has a completely different looking graph. Kind of have that bump here, but also at the same time, not really. So two majorly important things, in my opinion, to consider is definitely the value of the token. You don't want to buy high, then do a lot of IDOs and have the risk to sell low, right, when you want to take an exit. So that's definitely important to consider on one part. On the other part, it's the allocations that you receive. The actual bumps is something really important. So if we take this graph and we move here, you might wonder, this doesn't look like normal market trends because these are extremely aggressive sell-offs and extremely aggressive orders, right? The chart is not moving in a linear upward trend or a linear downward trend. So this is like some market movement, right? There's like a steep drop here, but that could be possible. But these are like huge pumps, huge dumps from people buying in like literally 1 hour tons of tokens and selling tons of tokens as well a couple of days later. So these tend to be major announcements, and you will see this in almost all of the launch pads when they announce new projects. So they announce a project that's going to be listed. A couple of days later, the IDO happens. So the day before the IDO, the last moment, then the IDO has happened and it dumps, right? That's why a lot of these launch pads require staking. If you do not require staking, like AnyPad, for example, at the moment, you will see a lot more volatility. As you can see, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. And here we can still see the linear downward trend, but it's very much shark teeth action going on right there, right? Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. That's basically how the chart moves. When we look at True P&L, this just basically shows for the last year, basically a different, so a lot of hype in the crypto gaming bull run right here in November, and then they have more of a linear downward trend. So basically you do see like some spikes here. So if we close it off a little bit more, you do see the trends, but the trends are a lot less aggressive than something like this or something like this peak specifically right here on the left hand side, right? So basically if I take out my sketchbooks, it's divided in 2 different things. What just happened? I need to make this white, please. So we have 2 different things to focus on, right? If you want to make the choice, what's the best launch pair out there for you? The choice is quite simple, right? On the one hand side, we have the token value, right? So this is value. And here we have the allocation. I'm going to give you a really simple analogy right here. So when we, for example, take the FIN token, right? FIN. I joined that IDO on AnyPad. I didn't sell my AnyPad tokens, but let's say you would, right? Because on AnyPad, you can join, you can buy the tokens, the snapshot is taken, and 10 minutes after the snapshot, you can dump your tokens. They're going to place staking soon, but it's just not available yet. So you could take potentially your advantage of that. So let's say you would buy in somewhere here, right? Somewhere in the recent days. So you would buy in, let's say on 2.7 cents, which is about a 20% increase from where it is right now. You buy 10,000 tokens, right? 100,000 tokens, doesn't really matter. 20% higher than it is right now. Then you join the F in launch, which basically the 10x, right? You could get up to $4,000 allocation on AnyPad. So $4,000 allocation, 10x, I mean, you make 40K with a 4K investment, 36K profit. That this token went down 20%, it doesn't really matter, right? Because it's now being compensated by the allocation. Yes, the allocation is vested, which is really important, right? Vested, my beautiful handwriting, but the balance between these two things should not be forgotten. It should also not be an endless argument. It's just quick math, right? So if the value of the token, whether it goes up or it goes down, the most important thing is, does the benefit of the allocation, the vesting as well, weigh out the token value increase and or decrease? So when we look at these charts, whenever a IDO is announced, the coins pump. Whenever an IDO closes or there's a shitty launch or the launches are postponed and the tokens are not locked within staking contracts, then the price dumps. Even if they would be staked, the tokens, and they are being unlocked after the staking period. So let's say the staking is 7 days after the IDO, then 7 days literally on the minute after that IDO has happened, you will see a dump. So you can definitely play in on these metrics. But then again, are you day trading the value of the token, or do you put your focus on the actual allocation? So my focus is always on this side, right? Yes, I do keep the value of the token in mind, but as I am usually in Launchpads for at least usually 3 to 6, AnyPad already a longer term, the value increase or decrease of the token doesn't matter that much to me. I obviously look, so I've been keeping my eye on Firestarter, I've been keeping my eye on the Unix Launchpad, right, which this is a new one coming out. The value here is extremely good because the value is really low. They haven't launched anything on their Launchpad, right? That's why it's been declining slowly. But they are going to do a Launchpad IGO coming up, introducing their Launchpad, which makes it the most affordable position right now to enter. Firestarter has already been pumping again, right, after the 53-cent low, basically. And for Firestarter, if you look at the all-time chart, yes, it was really affordable here. Now it's a little bit less affordable, but definitely not the 250 that it was before, right? So when you would make an entry right now for the medium long term, you're basically not guaranteed a good situation, but the balance between the allocation received over time, the potential value of those projects, if they do well, and then the value in dollar value should have less significant risk, right? If you take an entry right here at about $1, or you take an entry on, let's say, $2 here, the significant risk is higher because $2 compared to the all-time high of $3 relative to how low it could go when the market becomes bearish is significant. And that's obviously why I would never stake a token 90, 180, 365 days, a year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years, what we see with that fee launch bullshit. Because when launchpads enter a bearish market, when we enter a bearish market, the launchpads suffer because raising money is more difficult, people are scared, and in that case, literally, like I said, the token has just been linear downward trend. And everybody said I wasn't right. I spend a lot of time on launchpads and on tokens, and oftentimes I am not correct with my predictions. But this one, I was just so convinced that it was way overvalued. And ever since, it has been declining, because a 5-year lockup, you only do this if you really, really need to cut the circulating supply. And anybody who would lock their tokens for 5 years is a dumb cunt. right? Because a Launchpad, I think 5 years from now, the Launchpads are not even around in the model as they are presented right now. This industry is evolving way too fast to keep this current model alive. The Launchpads take a very small cut. The profit is not that crazy. And I love what Unix is doing. That's why I'm looking at Unix. They have an ecosystem, and the Launchpad is only one part of the ecosystem. Same thing as Seedify is doing right now. They're not only focused on Seedify Launchpad, they're going to build out an NFT Launchpad. They're building a game studio, right? There's like a lot more things. They're branching out and seeing the greater scope of things. And I hope VLaunch and other Launchpads are going to do that as well. I'm just definitely not confident on that Launchpad as I am on all the other ones. So basically, the question is, what would be the best Launchpad to buy right now? It's basically the perfect balance for you between these two things. It really depends on how much money you're willing to put at risk. Investment carries risk, not financial advice. Well, kind of. That's just the only sentence you can quote me on. Investments carries risk. Because obviously the Launchpads can go either up and down. They're very much volatile relative to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is doing well, sideways moving right now, stabilization period. If it pulls up, the Launchpads will go crazy. If it pulls down, the Launchpads will get destroyed. Specifically according to the Fear and Greed Index, which I quoted earlier. When the market is fearful, people don't want to invest into super risky things like IDOs. People don't want to raise money because they know people are fearful, so the IDOs get postponed. It's not a good market situation in general. However, the focus, in my opinion, what I do is should be on allocation to cover the potential devalue of the token, if that might occur, but usually it doesn't really happen if you make a good entry. Or the value of the token, some platforms go up, some go down, and you end up with 0% here, which is fine. I do not need to gain on the actual value of the token. I want to gain on the allocation because that's what I'm there for. A lot of people say like, oh, why not both, right? Why not both? In this indication, why not both is because, yes, I am there for the allocation. If it would go up, that is great, but it's not my primary focus. So I'm not going to put at risk losing my allocation by day trading the coin because that's a completely different business or investment model. Right? I'm there to get the allocation. I think that's what you should focus on. So if you go to categories on CoinMarketCap, you press Launchpad and you go to the actual Launchpad category right here. You have a complete overview of all the different Launchpads. It is very important that you consider their tiers and their token value. So there will be at least 4 to 6 hours worth of research, and you might be lazy, but that is what is required to make the right decision. Which Launchpad is the best pick for you right now? Yes, it's a lot of work, but if you've been following my channel, my journey with Launchpads has been extremely fruitful, way beyond my imagination, and I hope 2022 can bring that to new highs when the market either stabilizes and or recovers. But everything has been looking real good so far. The decision to whether this is the best Launchpad for you depends a lot on how much money you have, how much money you can put at risk, your risk tolerance, and obviously your experience in the market when it comes down to these two things. What is it you want? Do you want this, or do you want this, or do you want both? There's no best way, just my recommended way. So if you want to find the best Launchpad to buy right now, follow everything I said in this video. So all these steps. How much money do you have? Look at the tiers, look at the historic patterns of these Launchpads. Do you want straight increase in value? Do you take into consideration the decrease in value? How much risk do you want to take? And are you going for allocation? If you are going for allocation, look at all the past projects of each Launchpad to see the average performance. So that is a lot of work. I would say at least 4 to 6 hours, depending on how many Launchpads you're actually going to review. 4 to 6 hours would probably be 5 to 10 Launchpads. So pick well. If you want to do them all, 78 Launchpads, you're probably busy for about 20 to 30 hours, but there is no rush. That is very important. Everybody wants to rush their decision. There's no need. I've been looking every day at these Launchpads for about half an hour a day for the last 7 months, and I'm still not done learning. There's so many changes continuously, new Launchpads, problems with Launchpads and IDOs. So the best pick is always yours to make whenever you have all the data. Right? Let me know if you have any questions, put them down in the comments below and I'll be sure to have a look. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.